the NASPP Individual Achievement Award in 2007. Christine also serves as treasurer of the executive committee of the San Francisco NASPP chapter. She is also a frequent speaker for various industry events, including the NASPP chapter meetings, NASPP's national conference, and the NCEO Employee Ownership Conference, Global Equity Organization, or GEO, meetings, and E-Trade's Directions Conference. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Christine to do her thing. And Christine, I sincerely appreciate you for joining the Black Diamond Mastermind Group today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really, really happy to be here and talking to you all. I am a Bay Area native, so I've always lived in this area and have mostly worked in tech through my career. So, you know, and you can tell from my gray hair, I've been around since the beginning. When companies first, we've had the first IPO company that I worked for was Ask Jeeves here in Oakland. So probably did our IPO before some of you were even born. So I've experienced it all. I've dealt with all the various equity instruments that companies have, and kind of have seen the changes in companies' equity compensation programs and philosophies through the years. I have been very lucky again to doing this for a while. So I do have a seat at the table within my company to work directly with our compensation team, and I happen to report up through our legal team. But when companies grant stock to their employees, we're issuing new shares of stock. So obviously legal compliance, we have to make sure the shares are registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, they're freely tradable, all of that kind of stuff. But there also are accounting consequences within the company. And so that can limit how many shares they grant and that type of thing. And because they'll have to report that. It's just a book expense. It's not, you know, we're not actually writing a check to anybody for it, but it does have a book expense that we have to report every quarter to the investing public. So they always want to control how much of that spend they're using, and shareholders will look at, you know, how efficiently we're using our equity comp spend versus competitors. So we're always looking at that. Is there a question? Okay. So that part, and then also it's a big compensation element. So working with our HR team and compensation and making sure that the initiatives they're putting into place, that people can actually transact those and see a benefit from it, and that type of thing. And then a large portion, anytime you earn any type of compensation, be it cash compensation or equity compensation, it's reported through payroll. So I work very closely with the payroll teams. My big push for the last few years is these programs can be really complicated and really scary for employees. So it's trying to help them be a little less scary. And there's something that a lot of brokers will talk about too, and they call it investment inertia, is people will get there, they'll vest their shares and they won't do anything with it because they're terrified that they're going to do the wrong thing, or they're going to have, you know, negative tax consequence, or just they're so scared to make that decision that they don't do anything with it. And that for me is the worst, because we're giving you this, we're taking an expense on it, we have these programs set up, but you do nothing with it. And I'll frequently sit down. I do like open office hours where people can come by and ask me questions, and I'll have them, we happen to use Schwab to manage our programs. I'll have them log into their Schwab account. And the most terrifying thing for me is when I see somebody sitting on $1 million of vested equity, and it's just sitting there. And it's like, it's not doing anything for you. You need to find an investment advisor to help you with that. And then I get the blank stare of like, well, who, like Uncle Bob? Like, I don't have anybody. And we did do with our employee resource groups last summer, and it's something we're trying to do more of, is we had a financial education person who doesn't work for Schwab or any of the firms come in and just try to do a little bit of financial education for the various employee resource groups. And we met with the resource group leaders before we had those education meetings to kind of go over like, what are you looking for? Because it's different, right? Like our Black Twilions are coming from a different place than maybe our, we call it nest because we're all about owls. So then the family Twilions, right? They're looking for, how do I say for college, where, we found that when we talked to our employee resource group leadership for the Black Twilions, a lot of their members, like, this was their first tech job. So they didn't have family they could go back to and ask for, how do I find a financial advisor? Like, what do I do with this? Or that fear that if you go back, that, like with our, the Twilipinos, our Filipino resource group, they had the fear that if they went back and asked family, that they would be then asked to pay for everything for everybody. And they didn't want to do that either. So it was kind of, how do we, for each group, like, what are we looking at? So there's those resources. So we do, Twilio as a whole, and most tech companies right at this time, they grant restricted stock units, and we have an employee stock purchase plan. A lot of companies pre-IPO will also grant employee stock options. So we have those 3 types of awards. And what happens at Twilio is we have people that were here before our IPO that have options, that after the IPO, they got restricted stock units. And then they also participated in the ESPP. And as you guys have all probably figured out as you talk to your clients, it's so confusing to keep track of those. Which ones do you hold? Which ones do you sell? What are the tax consequences? How do you keep that all in line? And how do you advise your clients, like, hold those shares, sell these ones, and all of that, while keeping in mind you want to help them diversify. And hey, I know John.
Hey, Christine, how are you?
Hey, he's a Twilion too.
I got my new sweatshirt came in the mail.
I was gonna wear. We have this thing, like, you will end up. John you've only been here a few months, but after I've been here 4 years, I have like a dozen hoodies. So I just wear a different hoodie every day. And today I'm gonna be professional. I'm not wearing a hoodie. But it is hard. So yeah.
Christine, I want to bring that point up too. So when you are new to a Twilio or a tech company, what kind of questions are like the new hires asking you? Because like, you're the person, like, and again, there's so many different types that my clients are like, well, I got RSUs. I'm like, so what is your program like? And they can never tell me, like, in bullet point fashion, here's what I get, here's my vesting schedule. Like, is that how you spend your time? Like, hey, here's our program.
It's hard, and we're working on our communication. John can probably tell you too, like, there are good things and bad things. We just rolled out our first intranet. So before that, we had kind of this funky wiki page that was created by me, and I'm just a bean counter. So setting up anything where it's easy for people to figure out what they've got, not pleasant. And that's what happens in a lot of other companies. So you'll start at the company, you've got your offer letter that's written by legal, and it has some legalese, and you're like, I don't know, I get some shares, where are they? And usually within that, there's some information about when they're going to go to the board to have the board approve that grant. Anytime a company is issuing stock, the board of directors has to approve that issuance, because it is dilutive to the other shareholders, because you're issuing more shares of stock. So typically that will happen within a month or so of somebody joining a company. Then once it's approved by the board, then the company will push out a grant agreement to the employee. If it's a pre-IPO company, usually that's coming in paper and probably via DocuSign. A lot of companies will also use Carta. And depending on the size of the company, if it's a small pre-IPO company, they may not have a Christine there. They may just, random people are just doing pieces of it. They may have their outside law firm who enters the grant information in, and then it emails out to the person. So it's a little sketchy. Once the company's gone public, typically they will hire a Christine, a stock administrator, who can help the employee. So, and employees can usually reach out to that team or that person via email, or we just rolled out also a ticketing system. It's almost always at a company, stock at the name of the company, or equity at the name of the company. So you can try to work with your clients, like, hey, do you have a stock department, or do you have a stock team? Is there a stock at or an equity at? I have been equity at like 10 different companies. So that's typically one of the first email addresses companies will set up. Is that so? They can check on their intranet and see if there are any guidance on that to new hire FAQs, when people will receive grants. It's really hard, I think, right now in the pandemic time when there are no in-person meetings. So like the new hire onboarding process can be a little bit fuzzy. I know at Twilio, and John can probably again talk to you about this too. We give them, it must be 150 different links of videos that you watch about the company, which, we're all just zoomed out. And so the thought of like watching one more Zoom, and I get it. So I get a lot of questions that come through that are, exactly what you mentioned. When do I get my grant? How do I see my vest schedule? And I'm like, hey, you didn't watch the video. Here, go watch the video and then come back. Which is just painful too. And, or, go look at the FAQs and then, then we can talk after. But that part is hard. So if your client's working for a larger company or a company that's been public for more than a year, they probably have a stock team. They also, you'll want to find out if they're public, they're going to be using a broker to help manage their stock program. The two most common ones in this area are E-Trade and Schwab. So get them to log into their E-Trade or Schwab account. And in there, it will have probably their grant agreement. It'll have their vesting schedule. It'll have all that kind of information. And a lot of times, depending on the broker, the people can, it's hard for you probably too, right? You don't want to send them to E-Trade to ask questions because you don't want to send them away from you. But I know at least Schwab and for the most part, E-Trade too, and Morgan Stanley, like they all have kind of these platforms where they'll manage the program for the company. They're not usually doing a hard sell on use all these other products or help, let us be your financial advisor and manage those. But a lot of times they can download information from there. They can share it with you. They could do a Zoom call and share their screen with you so you could kind of see what's going on. I know Schwab has, and I think Morgan Stanley has it too, where they can set up advisor access. So you can, as an advisor, can log in and kind of get copies of their statements and do all that. You can't do transactions. They can give you the ability to do transactions, but I think they can cut it off so you can't accidentally do a transaction for somebody. But that can help there too.
And Chris, I was thinking, Ted, you've been kind of explaining. Thank you for sharing this. I'm taking good notes because these are the questions I'm going to ask my client. Hey, so I know it's with E-Trade or Schwab. Like, have you logged in lately? So thank you for sharing that. And I was thinking too, just for others, like, are you bombarded a lot with financial planning type of questions? Like, I know equity compensation is just one part, and if you are bombarded, like, is Twilio doing something specifically to help kind of lead people in the direction of, hey, here's like, I know there are all these internal directories, and so I've been working with some of my clients like get listed. Does Twilio even offer something like that at this time?
No, and this is the struggle that all of us have, the stock administration teams have, because the legal team, and I report up to legal, they won't want us to advertise, here's a list of financial advisors. What I have done is I have a list of Black advisors because our Black Twilions wanted, and so I was like, oh, I can't say that these people are good or bad, but here's some advisors that you might be more comfortable with. So I've done that. So if you have a list, I'm happy to share that there and put my disclaimers all over it, but I can't just put up a list. Sometimes companies will, like on an individual Slack channel or something, employees will start a list going, and that's totally fine. I can't do it because then people think that it's the company putting it out there. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge because I get those questions all the time when I do office hours. People are like, I don't know, should I put more money in the ESPP or the 401k? I'm like, well, I'm not licensed to tell you that. You need to talk to a financial advisor. And again, you get that blank stare. I think a lot of times what I get to and what I find too is with our underrepresented communities also, more so is the people have almost an imposter syndrome. Like, I have equity, but I don't, I can't go into a bank and get a financial advisor. Like, they're not going to talk to little old me. I don't have, and it's like, no, you do. And it's one thing that I've worked with Schwab because that is our one like main partner that I'm like, hey, if we're going to do financial education, we want other people. We want people that look like, it's more comfortable to talk to somebody that looks like me. I want to have a woman talk to the women's group. I want to have, and that type of thing, so that can make it easier. But trying to get your foot in the door to find those people, it's really word of mouth. So it's, that's what I found has been the most helpful, because people will post questions on, like, we have a stock Slack channel, and they'll post like, does anybody have a financial advisor they like? And then people will chime in there.
Perfect. And feel free, if anybody has a question they want to ask Christine about all things related to stock, like she's a pro. I got more questions too, because I wanted her for selfish reasons, because every time I have a client who's at a tech company, I'm like, hey, I know it's a lot of y'all there who don't know what you're doing. So, and that, to Christine's point, a buddy of mine, he's with Apple. And he was like, hey, I just got your name on the Apple directory. And I was like, thank you. And it's just a basic, like, it's part of their, whatever their internal thing is. He was like, I have your name and an email. I said, that's all I need. Like, I would try to find more people who work at Apple, but I think this is good information for all of us who are on this session, because it's a way of how do you get penetration into an organization, right? And so, be it for job opportunities or business, like I think you hit the nail on the head of just it's the network. Like, who do you know that's inside of these companies, and that's even how we met. So my good friend Misty, she's no longer at Twilio, but she's the reason we met on that panel. That's been like 3 or 4 years ago. She was like, I'll bring you in. We had a great time. And I was like, Christine was great. And so I remember what you said during that session around it's just staying in touch with this network of people who are in this space, because they're not financial advisors, but they know that the people they serve have a ton of questions that, again, like you said, you can't answer. It's not in your job description to do the work. So again, I'm just loving all of this for selfish reasons. But anybody else that has just general questions for Christine, feel free. I mean, we've got her here, so don't be afraid to ask whatever it is you're thinking about.
And just to add on to that is, like, it's just getting your name in there, but what you're competing against too is the big firms, right? Like, when Twilio first went public, I had every big brokerage firm coming in and saying, we'll do employee education for you for free. You have us in. And, I have a small group of kind of steering committee that we're trying to work on better financial wellness. We look at those and I'm like, they just want our book of business. They just are trying to do that. They want to spam our employees, so we don't want that. So you do have that side where if you do get into, like, with a stock person or an HR person, they're going to see through, they're going to know what you want to do, like, right away. So, and they have a very short window of kind of that kind of networking stuff, but it's really coming in through the employees is where you're going to get, it's just like you, right? If you want to hire somebody, you want to hire somebody that worked with you before, right? That they're what they've done. So that's what I have found works the best. I haven't found a better way in, because I have the same thing with tax advisors. People are like, how do I find a tax advisor? Like, ask your friends.
Hey. Hi, Christine. Hi, everyone. Sorry for being a little late. Life at Twilio, I had 11:30 and then hop right on here. But one housekeeping item, Christine actually was part of my interview panel. So obviously she gave me a yes vote because I am a Twilion now. So first off, thank you for that. And I haven't talked to you since we interviewed.
I keep meaning to reach
like
out.
Forever, right?
Yeah.
But I will take this opportunity because I think we have an office hours coming up this week, or it's during
this morning.
This morning I missed it. Yeah,
but
I think it was like
this
8
afternoon. I do it at night too. I do it.
Right. There's one at night through the 24th. So we're getting all these emails about the ESPP. And so I was thinking I have a little, cash reserve. And I was like, well, what's the process for that? And should I, invest in that? And how would the discount work, et cetera? I know it's like 15% of the discount of the stock price, but the price has been going up and down since I started. So I've been like, yay, this is awesome. I'm happy I joined. And then another day, like, oh man, this is bad. I hope it goes back up. So to be specific, on the day that if I decide to engage in the ESPP, at what stock price would I have it at? And then, how would that work?
This is perfect. And this is exactly the kind of questions that I get. And these are the kind of things that I hope you guys can help your clients with too. So just to nerd out completely, ESPP is my very favorite equity compensation vehicle ever, because you are always going to make at least 15% on your money. And even looking at, that 15% is going to be taxed as income when you sell the shares. Even working in the math with that, you still are going to make at least, I did this math once, like 7.5% on your money. You're not going to get that anywhere else, right? So the way, just to back up a little bit, the way the ESPP works, at least at Twilio, they're all different. Some are more beneficial than Twilio's, some are less. But the way they work is an employee will enroll in the program. The company will withhold money from their paycheck for a specified period of time. And then at the end of that period of time, the company will buy shares of stock for them at a discount. And the discount can vary. For Twilio's plan, the discounted price is the lower of the closing price on the first day of the 6-month period. We have a 6-month period, or the last day of the 6-month period, plus a 15% discount on that price. So if you enroll right now, our open enrollment period is right now. If you enroll right now, the purchase period starts May 16th and it goes through November 15th. So whatever the closing price of our stock is on May 16th versus November 15th, whichever one is lower, that's the price you get plus a 15% discount. We drop those shares into your account the day after purchase. You can turn around and sell them if you want. There are a higher tax consequence if you sell the shares right away. There can be some preferential tax treatment if you hold the shares for 12 months to 18 months, depending on things. But just to give you an example, for the last 2 or 3 purchases that Twilio has had, we've more than doubled our money at the purchase because the stock price has gone up so much. So it doesn't matter if it dips in the middle. It's only those 2 days you're looking at, the first day and the last day. For everybody else, maybe close your ears, John. There can be ESPP plans that are actually longer. A couple of the companies that have recently IPO'd or that are looking to IPO coming up, they'll put in a 1-year or a 2-year offering period with 6-month purchases in there. So what that does is that'll lock people into that original stock price at the beginning, and they'll be buying at that for either 1 year or 2 years. So that can be incredibly lucrative. That was when I was at Ask Jeeves 20 whatever years ago, we had a 2-year offering period. So we would purchase every 6 months. So I didn't have to lock my money up for 2 years, but I was constantly purchasing at the beginning price, which was our IPO price. So it was like $12. Ask Jeeves stock was one of the first like hot internet stocks. So we went up to like 150, and I held the shares and I sold them for $3.50. So we had a bit of a crash, but that's the kind of thing that your clients are worried about, right? They're like, I heard if I hold the shares, I have better tax. So do I hold the shares? Do I sell them? What do I do? And it's really helping them figure out that risk of ownership, right? If you hold the shares for a year and a half, there's that risk that the stock price goes down. Yeah, you'll pay less tax, but you'll make less money. Versus take the money now, reinvest it elsewhere, diversify, but you're going to pay higher tax. What happens for an ESPP? It's similar. If you've had employees with incentive stock options, the tax rules are very similar. So if you hold the shares for 2 years from the grant date or the start of the ESPP purchase, plus 1 year from the date of purchase, most of the gain is going to be long-term capital gains. Except for if ESPP, that little 15% discount we do, that's always going to be income in the year that they sell the shares. But hopefully, if it's like Twilio where we've had big gains, that's going to be a small portion of the profit that they make when they sell those shares. If they don't hold the shares that long, they sell them the next day, the whole spread at the time of purchase goes on their W-2 as income, and it just grosses up their income. We don't do any withholding on it. So if it is a significant amount, that could have negative tax consequences for them. That's where you want to have them talk to a tax advisor and see, like, should they be making quarterly estimated tax payments? Should, should they maybe sell some, hold some, whatever. But there are those complications with ESPP shares. So yeah, so discounted price. Some ESPPs only have a discount, the 15% discount on the price on the last day. So not all plans are the same. Some will be, and this is because they changed the accounting rules for ESPP about 10 or 15 years ago. So some plans didn't want to take a compensation expense for their ESPP, where you have to report that on your books to your investors. So they made it where you may have that 6-month offering period where, again, we're deducting money for 6 months. Then they just take the stock price on the last day of the purchase. They use that as the price and take off anywhere from 5 to 15%, and then deliver the shares. So in those plans, they don't have to take the plan where it's just the 5% discount on the day of purchase. They don't have to take a compensation expense because they're considered non-compensatory, because they're not as attractive. But if the employee really is looking to buy more shares of stock of their company, it can be an easy way for them to save and get that 5% discount, but they're not as beneficial. But a lot of the hot tech companies right now are going out and putting an ESPP in place with that longer offering period to kind of give their employees kind of that hockey stick of, like, assuming their stock price goes up, that it'll be more lucrative. But it does get complicated for employees, and that's why they come to you of, do I put more money in my 401k or do I put more money in the ESPP?
Christine, I have one quick follow-up based on that explanation. So I think I'm sorry for everyone for being Twilio specific, but I'm trying to figure it out before the 24th of April. So I believe Twilio allows for the ESPP between 1 and 15%. So is there a way that you could do a calculation to determine the amount per share that you're doing? Let's say if you want to do 10%. And the stock is 300. Is there a calculation so you can determine either how many shares you're going to get at that percentage rate or the price at that percentage rate?
Kinda. And this is a good thing also to bring up to everybody else. All the plans are different with how much you can contribute. Twilio's plan allows employees to contribute between 1 and 15% of their compensation, and we define the compensation as their base pay and commissions if they're in sales. All the plans are different. It could be 1 to 20% or 1 to 10%. It could be any of those. They also sometimes will allow you to change your contribution rate, and some won't allow you to change your contribution rate. Twilio's plan, we allow you to lower your contribution rate once during each 6-month period, but you can't increase it because of accounting reasons. So it's definitely something to talk to your employees, your clients about also. I'll usually advise people to try to go in at the highest rate that they think they can afford, because they can bring it down, but they can't go up. And I'll get to your question in a second, John. But the way that it's calculated too is it's calculated on and this is pretty universal, calculated on your gross pay, so the pay before all of the deductions, but it's deducted off of your net pay. So they'll feel it more than a 401k contribution. So if your paycheck was $1,000, but you usually take home, say, $600, and you do 10%, we're going to take $100 off of what you would normally take home. So people will feel that more. Like with a 401k, those deductions are done before all the other deductions. So you don't feel it as much because it lowers your taxable base for the 401k contribution. So it's something for people to keep in mind when they're figuring out what percentage to do or what they could live with. Especially like John is new with the company. Like if you're new and you haven't gotten a paycheck, or like new salespeople who, are maybe living off of their with the little stipend and they're not getting commissions yet, they'll really feel it and then kind of freak out when they their paychecks, their first paycheck shows up after the ESPP. And then to calculate how much you're going to buy, we don't know the stock price in the future. So we can't accurately say, here's how many shares, but you can look at the stock price, you know, when it closes on May 16th and say, closed at $350 a share, 15% discount. If I contribute, you know, looking at if I contribute 10% of this, I'll contribute probably, you know, $4,000. So I think I would probably purchase this many shares, depending, as long as the stock price keeps going up.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. There is a limit. There's just like with stock options, which you may have had some of your clients say they have employee stock options. You can get two types of employee stock options. There's an incentive stock option, and that has to qualify for a bunch of different things that the company has to do to ensure that that qualifies as an incentive stock option. If they have that at the time of exercise, we don't collect any taxes. And if they hold the shares for that set period of time, then they can qualify for preferential tax treatment when they actually sell the shares. The other type of option doesn't qualify for that preferential tax treatment, so we call it a non-qualified. So we have the same thing with ESPP. You could have a qualified plan and you could have a non-qualified plan. The qualified plan has to adhere to certain rules and regulations. And then if you have that type of plan, the employee could have preferential tax treatment when they sell the shares. If you don't have a qualified plan, at the time of purchase, whatever discount they have would be taxable as income. I'm assuming most of you guys are in the San Francisco Bay Area. Tech companies, 99% of them do a qualified ESPP. So it's qualified under section 423 of the tax code. And what that means is that at the time of purchase, no taxes are going to be collected in the US, and it's only going to be taxed, that income portion, in the year that they sell the shares. One of the provisions for having a qualified ESPP is each employee can only purchase up to $25,000 worth of stock in each calendar year the purchase is outstanding. So most companies will let employees contribute up to $21,250 because you have to knock off that 15% discount. And the payroll departments will usually stop their contributions when they max out, when they reach that. It gets super complicated if your plan crosses a calendar year, because you can kind of pull limits forward and that type of thing. But usually the payroll departments will stop contributions so people won't over contribute. If they do over contribute, what happens is they'll just get a refund after the purchase of any amount they over contributed.
Christine, I'm blown, because how is a new person gonna know all this? Like this is ridiculous. Like companies should just say, look, we got these options, and let's hire a team of people and let them just have this like relationship. Like it needs to be a contract to say, like what you just explained. People are like, what the hell? I have a job to do. I have kids. Like they don't have time. And I think this is the struggle that I've had with people like, oh, I have these options. I'm like, well, who's your equity comp person? Because I have a working knowledge because I've taken tests and I've learned some of these things. I know Anise is a CFP, so he's had to go through that same learning process, but this is like real life application where it's like, this isn't in a book. And so every company is a little bit different, but I think this is the problem that I have with the companies is that they're not, I'm not saying they're not, they could do more to help.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think Twilio can do a lot more to help. And up until about a week ago, it was only me and 5,000 employees. So, it comes down to resources, right? Because, and it's like payroll too, right? Like I'm sure all of your clients have had issues with payroll because, companies want it done. They want it done accurately at 100%, but they also are like, I don't want to pay for that. And getting companies, and this is where Twilio has been, I feel, better than other companies I've been at, where I've actually gotten budget for education. Like I could hire somebody to do education, and we wanted somebody who was not affiliated with one of the brokers because all they do is want to sell their stuff. But I didn't get like a huge amount of money. I got like, here's a little bit, you can, go off and hopefully make that work. But it comes down, to just corporate struggle too, right? Because these programs are set up by HR and compensation, but typically they're run by somebody. The stock person usually reports to finance or legal. And so, well, am I supposed to educate about, I take this on as I should, but am I supposed to educate about the program, the comp program that you set up? Or are you going to educate employees about the comp program you're setting up? Or how does that work? And, it becomes this big finger pointing thing. And I just take it on because I'm like, somebody has to do this. And it's complicated. It's hard. And it becomes hard because, I'm not a teacher. Most companies don't have teachers on staff to teach about this stuff. And you do have a full-time job. And when just, starting on, John, you could probably talk to this, just figuring out what all the acronyms are. It took me 6 months from when I got to Twilio to ask somebody what a API is. You guys probably know what it is, but we use it all the time. And I finally was like, Jeff talks about API all the time. What is it? Like one of the engineers, and they told me, I was like, oh, okay, I got it. But we have, 700 different acronyms for things. So you're trying to figure all that out. And then Christine comes along and is like, do you want this free money? Do you want the free money? Because there's this plan and I'm going to give you free money. But I can't just say it's free money, right? I report into legal and they're like, okay, did you tell them all of this legalese? And I'm like, I did. And then they stopped listening. So it becomes really hard in companies. And this is something that, like we hired Schwab and they do some education, but again, it's something that clients of theirs, we have to keep pushing on them to like, help us do more education, do better education. And because they have the experts too, but it's hard to find people that have an expertise in this and have an expertise enough that they also can help the employees. I think this is, John, I'm just keep putting you on the spot. I think this is your first tech company that you've worked at. So you haven't necessarily seen how it's been at other companies, but it's kind of whoever they hired to be the stock administrator, like how passionate they are about educating the employees. Like I'll get some people that are like, I came from this other company and I never got information, or I couldn't get information about this, or I don't know how that worked. And I'm like, well, yeah, sorry, that's what they did. But we don't have, and I've been harping on this in the industry too, just that we need to just own this and educate people more. And right, John came from the financial services side. Yeah, I was, and I remember talking to you about that too in your interview. So I interviewed John. One of the things that Twilio does too is John and I don't work together. Otherwise, we probably would have talked other than, just now. We have a bar raiser interview who just talks about culture. So that's what I interviewed John. I was just the bar raiser for that. So it's like this guy, and I still remember the post cap after everybody had interviewed you. Everybody loved you. It's like, oh my God, he is such a Twilion. Like we have to have him here. So thankfully everybody else agreed to. So, yeah, it really depends on the company. And, Twilio does really value education and making sure that the employees understand what's going on all through the ranks. It's big with our CEO, CFO, everybody. But not all companies are like that, especially like bigger old companies. Like if you have clients at Apple, they've been doing this and granting for 40 years. They have just a system that goes. So it's hard to do anything different or to get them to move and do anything different.
Right. And Jason, I think you had a question right before John had asked this. I know we've got a few more minutes left with Christine. I want to be respectful of her schedule. But Jason, did you have something you wanted to ask or mention to Christine?
Christine, based off of your history, what are the top 5 issues you see employees come to you about when it comes to their stock compensation plans? Your top 5, you think?
Top 5, should I sell my shares or hold them? Should I put money in the ESPP or in the 401k? I get that a lot. A lot of times they're so confused with all of it. They just do nothing. So it's kind of that, how do I figure it out? I think I always tell people it's kind of the 4 things. It's you have to know what you have. So That's, go into your E-Trade account, Schwab account, whatever they use. Um, understanding what it is. So if you go in there and you have all these shares, like where did they come from? What are they? So they want to know that. What is your company's comp philosophy? Like why did they give this to you? And then how do you get more? So different companies have different philosophies. Like Twilio, Jeff came from Amazon, and the Amazon comp philosophy was you get your base pay, and it may not be great. Like we pay, I think, the 70th percentile for base pay. We don't have, John and I can attest, we're adequately compensated, but we are not like, our salary was not so much that we were like, woo, I'm staying here forever. It's like, I can pay my bills. But everybody gets RSUs, everybody, like receptionists, like me, everybody gets an RSU, 100% of the employees do. So we don't have a bonus program. And this was similar, the Amazon philosophy is you have your base pay where you can, live, but then your bonus is from you growing the company and making it more profitable. So you get an RSU. So it's in our interest from the top down to make sure everybody understands what the RSUs are, because that's the only program that we have, the only lever. We can't say, oh, if the company does well, you're going to get more bonus. Like, nope. If the company does well, hopefully the stock price goes up, you get more value. Different companies like Salesforce, they only grant to maybe 30% of their employees because they have to control, again, how many shares they're putting out into the world, their spend that they're reporting on the books. So their comp philosophy is going to be very different, right? Like, why do you get an RSU or not? What level, who gets an RSU? Is it competitive? They do have a better ESPP than we do. They have a 1-year offering period. So their stock is usually pretty good at going up. So they kind of offset that, right? Like we don't grant RSUs to everybody, but they can buy the ESPP shares if they want to. So it's really understanding that. So it's understanding what you have, what it is, why you got it, what their philosophy is, and then how do you get more? What is your company's grant philosophy? Do they grant every year? Does your grant have a 4-year vesting so they don't make you another grant until 4 years are up? What are they looking at? Like Twilio, every year, our comp team talks to the managers and they look at what somebody's equity hold is, that unvested equity. What is that? Like, is that enough to keep John at the company? Or is it like, we need to make him another grant because he's so valuable. We need to make sure we retain him. So those are kind of some of the different levers that I think it's important that those are the questions that I get that people want to know about. Does that kind of help, Jason?
Yes, it does. That helped me out a lot as well. My second question I'll ask you is why do you prefer ESPPs over RSUs?
I prefer it because once people understand it, it's fairly simple. It's you put money in a bucket, you save it for 6 months, and then you always get a discount, at least 15%, and then you get shares. So one of the Twilio values is to be an owner. And Jeff means it as like act like you own the company because don't just put your cup in the sink, wash it and put it away. But I take it literally, like I want you to be an owner. So with most new hire grants, and this is pretty general in the tech area, they have what's called a 1-year cliff. So you don't vest or get any of those shares for 1 year. With ESPP, you're getting shares within 6 months. And typically people start feeling like owners when you first start seeing that money come out of your paycheck. You feel like I'm using that to buy stock. So they get that ownership feel right there. They're actually doing something. So that's why I like it. And I've been through a couple bubbles where, my RSUs went boom. And ESPP, again, you're always getting that 15% discount and you're buying every 6 months. So it's a lot easier to make money off of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Definitely.
Yeah,
Thank you again, once again for coming. As the president of the coalition, thank you again for coming out for this.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
All right, I know about 12 to the top of the hour, and again, we kind of like to wrap this up around 10 till. So any final questions for Christine before we let her back out into the wild to manage her 5,000 people by herself?
I have one other person now.
Yeah. So she's got 2,500. Split it half and half. She's got 20.
But that's what happens with companies, especially smaller ones, is they're looking at like, do I hire another payroll person or do I hire a stock person? Like, payroll, you know. So.
Yeah, and I had a client who didn't have a Christine, and I was like, but y'all been public for a while. They're like, oh yeah, it just goes to some department. And I was like, there's not a person. Like, yeah, we haven't hired yet. And I just thought it was weird that this company is successful. There's a software company. I'm like, how's there not like at least one person? And so I know how valuable you are to Twilio, because there, again, some companies that I've come across, I'm like, there's nobody explaining what you just explained to us briefly. Like, it's weird to me, but I guess it's how the world works. It's not
Well, and
perfect.
it's one of those things too. There are only about 5,000 people that do this in the world. So, you know, companies, some don't see a value in it. And right now, there is so much demand for stock people. I probably get a call a week with like, but I love Twilio. I'm not going anywhere, John. But I really do love Twilio. Again, I've worked at a million places and we just have a really good culture. We work really hard, and there are frustrating times, but for the most part, it's the people are great and they're easy to work with. But if any of you want to switch to stock admin, go check out the CEP Institute of Santa Clara University. Learn more about it. There's a ton of jobs.
So Jason, I'm gonna make a note of that too, just for the coalition, in terms of, because everybody's not gonna be a salesperson, Christine. So some of us are practitioners, others are in banking, investments, insurance, real estate, accounting. I believe it was Eunice who's in accounting. So we're meeting people who have this interest in tech. And I'm not an engineer. And I tell people, like, there's so many ways to get involved with tech. And so, Jason, we'll kind of make a note of this. Maybe this is something we should kind of see who's has some interest, because
Actually, I would love to partner with you guys on that, because I'm also working with some of our other administrators, because the stock plan industry, like when it's grown, it grew a lot from people who were like, I was the CFO's admin at a company, and he just was like, hey, do you want to do this stock thing? And I was like, sure, but it's a lot of white women. So I've actually been talking to, and I'm Filipino, so it's not really show, but I've actually I just did a talk at the CEP annual symposium with some other stock people about, like, we need to bring more diversity in. We need to bring, there are, I think, I want to say 4 Black people in our 5,000. And, there are like 7, Filipinos, and otherwise there's a lot of white people. Of course, I just hired a white guy. So, but, I was just, as I'm talking about that, I was like, oh. But we are working on, like, how do we get more diversity and how do we encourage our vendors? Because a lot of times we steal people from our vendors, right? Like, oh, you were at E-Trade for a while, come on over. You already know the baseline, but how do we get people educated, and how do we build that pipeline of building more diversity? So I would love to partner with you on that. And, if there are people interested, you guys have the baseline knowledge of stock, which is sometimes the hardest to teach. We can teach the other stuff. You have customer service, attitude already, which that again is, those soft skills are hard to teach. Like, there's so many open jobs right now. We've got to grow that pipeline more.
and then Otis, I think we have one last question. Otis, you want to go ahead?
Not a question, just a
Okay.
compliment to the
Okay.
organization for having Christine here. This has been extremely informative. I've learned more in the past 30 minutes than I ever would have known. So thank you, Christine, and thank you, Black Diamond, for having her.
All right.
Time.
Well, with that, Christine, I'm gonna let you get back to it. Again, thank you for very enlightening. You've sparked some more ideas for me personally. I'm sure for the rest of the group, in terms of how we think about how to better serve our clients, but also too for just thinking about different opportunities. That this is a space that I think is pretty much untapped at this point, especially from a diversity standpoint, which is hot right now.
Yeah, it is. And there's just so much work out there. And I'll connect you also with the other folks on the committee, the Black folks. So they can also learn how to that they can help, because like the leader of stock at Lyft is Black, and he and I have been like just so passionate about, like, how do we get more people to do this? Like, nobody comes to you and is like, hey, here's a great employment opportunity, right? Like, and so we've been trying to, like, how do we build that? So yeah, that'll be great. And please, connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can always email me if you have questions, or if you have a client that's like, I don't know, I have RSUs and I'm at, whatever. A lot of times I know the stock people at the different companies too. I'm happy to help connect you too. So.
Awesome. Well, Christine, on behalf of the Black Diamond Mastermind Group, we want to thank you again for sharing your expertise with us. And I'm sure folks will be reaching out to connect with you. And glad we were able to reconnect after a few years. So I'm excited to see you still there. And we're still going to be here trying to do our part to make a difference in this. And I'll say across the board in terms of filling these positions and bringing in experts like yourself to encourage us to do a little bit more to educate ourselves around topics that we don't see every day or come across every day. So again, on behalf of the group, I want to thank you for coming out today.
Great, thank you. It was great meeting you all. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank
you for joining us today.
Yeah. All right, y'all. So we have about 5 minutes left, and hope y'all enjoyed it. So Danielle, Eunice, Anise, this, John, I didn't know John was at Twilio now, so congrats, John, on that. And y'all see how John rolled in? It was like, I got questions for work-related stuff. So John think he's slick, but it's all good, man. It's all love. But that's part of what we're trying to do, y'all. Like you see what happens when we bring in people. Like, I know there aren't Black people, and Christine had mentioned that on that panel I was on with her years ago around, we're not even thinking about stock equity as a career path. There's probably some free money out there for somebody of our skin complexion who can go in and do that program at Santa Clara. Like, I'll follow up with her and Jason. Maybe this is something we can lump in the coalition here, because we are in the Bay Area, a strategic partnership of some sort, and see if we can kind of funnel some people into that program to kind of see this all the way through. So I'm super pumped about just reconnecting with Christine, and to everybody who, if this was your first time, like, this is the value that this type of a group brings. You don't get this in your job, you don't get this at your firm, but this is a unique group that allows us to, I'll say, have honest conversations about what we need in all of our respective career fields, but knowing that, we got people. It's just a matter of us all collectively utilizing our networks to get exactly what we want. We dream and fantasize about being successful, and there's no reason why we can't all go out here and kill it. So again, for everybody, this is your first time attending. I appreciate you for rocking with us every third Wednesday, 11:30 to 1. And we are trying to branch out to outside of the Bay Area. So thank you all to my East Coasters, because it's virtual now. So there's no excuse. This started out as a lunch at Jason's office. So now people don't have an excuse as to why they can't find maybe their village that they're not receiving it through their employer. So join our village, join the coalition, get involved, get connected. We do our best to take care of the people who show up. If we know what you're trying to do, if we know, your area of focus, it may not be me directly or anybody in this group, but we know people. So if you're trying to get into tech, Eunice, as you're thinking about different career opportunities, I'm not saying it's tech, but clearly nobody's in equity compensation. So I mean, we're gonna keep sourcing opportunities the more that we stay connected and go a little bit deeper with our relationships. And I think that's what the pandemic caused all of us to have to do, hopefully, was to dig a little deeper into your village, to go deeper with these relationships, to send those text messages and calls, just to check in on people. Like, don't ask for nothing. Just, you good? How's life? How's the family? And I think what you'll find is that people, they're more receptive to that versus, all right, I need a job. Can you help me? Oh, I need a client. Can you help me? Versus, just having that genuine care of, I want to see you win. And what can I do to be of service to help you get there? So,
Jasper,
yes, sir.
Not to be petty, but just as a reminder, I just want to let you know that I still got $15 in the bank, my brother, for lunch if we ever do get back together again, because I prepaid for a lunch and then the pandemic came. We didn't have a live lunch. So I just want, for the record, this is being recorded. I just want to let you know, brother, Otis Watson has prepaid $15 for lunch, brother.
The organization has already utilized those funds. We'll see if we can find some receipts of said payment.
No.
We'll see. I'll have to check with accounting. All right, everybody. So we got like a minute left. We always try to start on time, end on time, being respectful of everybody's busy schedule. So if there's anything else that you need, I know I believe it's Brittany or Jason's been posting stuff about the coalition in the chat. Feel free to connect with us, online, LinkedIn, set up some coffee, virtual meets, just to get better connected. And as always, however we can be of service to you as the Urban Financial Services Coalition, let us know because we can do some magical things if we continue to work together. So with that, I bid you all farewell. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing you all next month at the Black Diamond Mastermind Group meeting.
Definitely. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Boom.